This is going to be a video that some people don't like. It won't be popular. It won't get a high count of listenership or comment. But I've never been really driven by what's popular. Probably to my detriment as a YouTuber. Just basically speaking on what's going on. Not really caring too much about the immediate marketability of my sentiments. However, I do perceive that I represent a lot of people in the United States of America in making this video. So I'm heading into my last weekend in the United States. I've been in this country, for going on 4 decades now. I came here as a precocious young man. Against my will, I tried to escape many times. Never quite managed it. And have lived a hybridized existence that I believe is akin to what most Americans or hybrid Americans experience. I'm grateful for that experience, the great melting pot experience of living in a country, having roots in another country, never feeling quite at home with either one. You're somewhere in between. And along with doing my musical stuff and my instruments, I've also been a teacher for almost 20 years now. And I must have read, over 100 essays of second, first, third generation Americans talking about their experience straddling 2 different cultures, their adopted culture and their native or origin culture. And I've probably experienced the easiest version of that along the way, because I came to the US as a Brit. I didn't have to learn another language. I did have to navigate a few weird accents. It's not like learning a different language. My experience was easier. I'm a white man. I didn't have the same difficulties that many other immigrants have had coming to this country, whether contemporaneously or throughout history. So I've been lucky. I can pass. I can get by without being detected. Sometimes it's cowardly. Sometimes you feel it necessary to not bring attention to yourself. So I've been here for almost 4 decades. I've lived in 5 of your great cities, if you're American, 3 of your very diverse and unique states, probably visited some half of the states of America, maybe a bit more than half actually. And I can say in some respects it is indeed America the Beautiful, and in others decidedly ugly. I've seen some stuff during my time here. I've been downtown LA, Watts, Inglewood, East Side San Diego, Mission District, San Francisco, over the Rhine, Cincinnati. I've seen stuff. I've experienced stuff. But I've also seen some absolute beautiful things as well in all of the states. The mountains, the rivers, the coastal line. Things like the Hawking Hills in Ohio or the Serpentine Mounds. Great deposits of history. The wonderful caverns of Southern California, the beautiful coastline down into Mexico, Baja, and what I consider to be the most cosmopolitan city of San Francisco that I enjoyed for 2 years, just over 2 years, in a Ukrainian/Russian part of the avenues. I enjoyed that. I've always felt at home with other immigrants, even if I don't speak the language. I've always considered it the richness of this country, something to be celebrated. I've never felt quite at home, I'll admit. I've always been a bit of a hermit. I've always never quite assimilated. I never really learned the pledge. I never fervently sang the anthem because you stole the tune from one of ours. No, I'm just kidding. Never felt rampant nationalism. Always was a bit flummoxed by the sort of patriotism I see here. Won't go into that. I've railed against this country politically. I've been in part of many political movements that are against the grain, that are against the mainstream. Have chafed a lot of Americans along the way, being a transplanted Brit, not growing up with gun culture, coming from a different place, having a different mindset, trying to understand and appreciate, sort of the pioneer spirit that I've run into, and made allowances for differences of opinion and things like that. I've made some of the greatest friends I've ever made in this country. Some of my college friends are still some of the best friends I've ever made. I also married an American and had American kids. They're hybridized now because they've got their UK passports and are transitioning, like myself, to that country over the next few months. One's already there. But they are American. They sound American. They have American foibles. And, culturally, they are American. They have a few English cast-offs from my personality over the years, but they are more American than British. So it's been the country where I've raised family, where I've made many great friends, where I've learned many things, where I've gained most of my wisdom. I did not become a luthier through longing and planning. I became an instrument guy purely by chance, as a musician getting a job in a old artisan violin shop in Cincinnati, where I learned the trade, where I became passionate about the trade. I didn't really have the skills to do this sort of work. So I owe that to the land I'm on. I owe that to the existence that I've had over the last few years. However, I'll be honest, I've always remained British. Always felt English. That's just the way it is. Those of you who have a home country will understand what I'm talking about. It's not something you decide on. It's not something that you plan. Some do. I've met a lot of transplanted Brits and expats that are very pro-America, and they just sort of almost distance themselves from anything from the mother country. I've met other immigrants like that too. They really embrace a new country and all it has to offer, and don't look back. But there are others too that are always looking back, particularly older immigrants that began life in a different country with different customs, with different cuisine, ideas, political structure, allegiances. It's difficult to switch them over. You try to retain some of what you had and mix it with some of what you're getting. And I realized that in looking back, I've lived the experience, albeit an easier one, of many Americans. Most Americans are hybridized. They're part parent culture and part American assimilated. It's a massive story in this country. It's one that I think should be celebrated more. I saw it immediately in California, how I immediately gravitated towards making Latin American friends. particularly back in the days where I played football, or what you Americans call soccer. I made all kinds of friends from Central and South America. I felt, even though I didn't share the language, I felt some sort of affinity. And along the way, it's been Ukrainian, North African, Central African, South African, Australian, Eastern European, many friends from those kinds of countries and experiences. And I understand the wish to cling to something, some identity, and still be open to a new experience, to being American. Being American is a very powerful force. Everybody wants to adopt part of the American culture, no matter how minimalist you think it might be. It's popular. It's a driving force in the world. Every time I go back to England, I see England becoming more Americanized. The kids pick up the lingo, the sentiments, the cultural aspects, the entertainment aspects. It's a huge force in the world. I have a friend from Portugal that says it's the same there. It transcends languages. I understand the power of the American experience. What people refer to as the American dream, I understand it. I've never really felt like I've had a part of it. I think it's a bit of a fantasy, actually, if truth be told. However, I've lived a safe existence. I've lived a existence that's contributed to growth and wisdom. Maybe that's all the American experience is, or the American dream is just growing as a person. Does it have to be attached to wealth and gain, monetary gain? I would say most immigrants in this country do not experience that. They experience hardship. They experience starvation. When I was working in San Francisco, I worked in a deli with people from Ukraine and Russia and Cambodia with PhDs. They were sweeping floors. They were, being janitors. So, there's a whole swirl of emotions as I enter this last weekend in America. Part gratitude, part relief, part some cultural identification with the place, but also realizing that I spent most of my existence here never quite fitting in, never quite assimilating. And maybe that's the story of most people who come to this country, because you're made up of many identities. You're a myriad of sort of experiences in your life, and to only associate with one sort of geopolitical bloc, if you've been many places, is probably against the norm. It's probably usual to feel that you don't quite belong somewhere, and that you have a split allegiance, if you like. It's interesting that when I meet English expats or British expats along the way in America, many of them are more patriotic, more fervent, and you feel this in the World Cup or the European Championship whenever England's playing. It's almost like they are more patriotic than the people that actually live in England. And I understand that. I understand living abroad and what it feels like, and that opportunity to feel like you belong just for a few minutes, and perhaps how you overcook it, overindulge in it. And maybe it seems fake to other people because you're desperately trying to cling to some part of your identity. But it's not. It's a very legitimate experience. I see it with Asian Americans, I see it with African Americans, I see it with Eastern European Americans, and people that come here from all manner of countries and cultures. It's not something they choose. It's part of the human kinetic experience to try and connect to as many different points of experience as you can. So I think it's all legitimate. It's all perfectly fine. I don't think there's any correct way to belong in this world. I realize this is not a musical instrument video, and probably takes us out of the purview and the remit of this channel, but I hope you'll indulge me just for a few minutes as I nostalgically, admittedly, reflect on a number of decades spent in this country. I'm walking around the beautiful evening climes of Colorado at the moment. It's a beautiful place. As I anticipate going back to the kinds of views and historical places that I grew up with and enjoy so much and miss so much. I really do appreciate both, and I really am grateful for this experience, for all the people that I've met here, interacted with, particularly in the instrument world, all the people I've either sold instruments to or perhaps repaired their instruments along the way. I always feel a connection with those people, whether I do a great job or I feel like, perhaps there's something lacking in my performance. I don't feel any less connected to those people. So thanks for letting me expatiate on this theme for a few minutes. Hopefully it wasn't dull and uninteresting. And I'm not sure if I'll get another video in this country. I am flying in 4 days. There's a lot to do. And at some point you're going to see a very different backdrop to these videos. And hopefully I can get started on bringing some instruments in and getting back to the theme of this channel. Thanks again to everyone for your support, and for those that take the time to reciprocate. I always enjoy your interaction. Okay, see you soon.